Welcome to Pods and Ears, the podcast for grain elevators, processors, and feed mills who are ready to turn their scattered data into a strategic advantage. I'm Rob Houston, co-founder of Innovative Grain, and over my 30 years in the commodities business, I've seen what helps grain operations thrive, and my goal is to help you do the same. In each episode, we're going to challenge the conventional thinking about how you view your data and your ROI. Whether it's unified data systems, business intelligence, or just making smarter decisions with what you already have, we're here to give you practical insights you can actually use. Let's get started. Today's episode is a little different. We're not talking about data platforms or technical analysis or market cycles. We're talking about something more fundamental. We're talking about how you sell, how you buy grain, or how you approach a producer, and whether the approach you're using is actually working for you and, more importantly, for your customer. A few years ago, I wrote a LinkedIn article called Assertive versus Aggressive. It was focused specifically on grain merchandisers and originators, and it resonated with a lot of people. I still get comments on it, but as I've spent more time working with cooperatives and agribusinesses that touch both sides of the producer relationship, buying grain on one side and selling inputs like seed, fertilizer, chemicals, and fuel on the other, I've realized the framework applies to a lot more than just the grain desk. So today, I'm going to revisit that topic and broaden it. If you're in ag sales in any capacity, whether you're a grain merchandiser, an originator, an agronomist, a crop inputs salesperson, an energy salesperson, or even a general manager trying to grow your cooperative's business, this episode is for you. And I'm going to introduce a sales methodology that I think fits agriculture better than almost any other industry. It's called the Challenger Sale. And if you haven't read the book, I'd encourage you to pick it up. But we'll get to that in a few minutes. Are you aware of the difference between being aggressive and assertive in sales? In the ag industry, these two words get thrown around like they mean the same thing. They don't. And the distinction is probably costing some people customers, and they don't even realize it. Let's start with what aggressive looks like, because it's easy to spot once you know what you're looking for. And honestly, it looks the same regardless of which side of the business you're on. On the grain side, aggressive merchandisers and originators are known for a few things. Cold calling, or what I call pounding the phones, asking what keeps you up at night, or leveraging freight or basis for the arbitrage, asking what will it take to buy your grain, rehearsing their pitch or opening like it's a script. The most aggressive ones pride themselves on probing and finding an opportunity to present, overcoming objections, cementing the purchase with a contract, and then asking the producer if he knows someone else with grain to sell. It's classic sales training, and you've all seen it. On the input side, aggressive salespeople look remarkably similar. They lead with price sheets. They push volume commitments with early order deadlines. They default to what keeps you up at night, because someone told them that was a good discovery question 20 years ago, and they've been using it ever since. They pitch the newest seed variety or the latest chemical program without understanding the producer's operation, his soil types, his rotation, or his financial situation. And they measure success by tons sold or gallons moved, not by outcomes for the customer. In both cases, whether you're buying grain or selling inputs, the aggressive approach centers on the transaction, the commodity, the product, the close. And look, does it work? Sure, it can for any salesperson, especially short term. And you can make a living that way. But think about your own experience as a customer. Think about the last time someone tried to sell you something. Did they convince you to do something? Or did they help you and provide the information you needed to make an informed decision? Those are two very different experiences. Now, let's talk about what assertive looks like. The most assertive sales professionals in agriculture, whether they sit on the grain desk or in the crop inputs office, are known for something different than their aggressive counterparts. They are known both internally and externally for adding value. They are confident and straightforward. They find genuine satisfaction in conversations, in building relationships, and in doing business. Not just closing deals, doing business. And there's a huge difference. On the grain side, assertive merchandisers ask questions that uncover the real motive to sell. And by the way, it may not be obvious. Maybe the producer is looking to lock in a profit margin. Maybe it's a cash flow decision. Maybe he's a scale-up seller who wants to sell in increments as the market moves higher. Maybe he wants to protect downside risk on grain he hasn't harvested yet. The assertive merchandiser takes the time to understand this. He confirms what sense of urgency exists. It might not be that day or even that crop year, and this is critical. He gives value after having purchased the grain, not just before. After, through market insight, through technical analysis, through helping the producer understand where basis levels are relative to 3-year or 5-year historical averages. He earns the next bushel by how he treats the producer after the first one. On the input side, assertive professionals do something the aggressive ones almost never do. They walk into the conversation with an insight the producer hasn't considered. They bring something to the table before they ever ask for anything in return. Maybe it's a soil health observation from recent tissue or soil sampling data that changes how the producer thinks about his fertility program. Maybe it's a cost per unit analysis that shows a higher-priced seed variety actually delivers better ROI at that producer's specific yield levels. Maybe it's a fungicide timing recommendation based on local weather patterns and disease pressure that the producer hadn't thought about. The point is, the assertive professional adds value by helping the producer see something he couldn't see on his own. That's the difference between showing up with a price sheet and showing up with a perspective. Here's where the best ones separate themselves even further. They know their customer well enough to adapt how they deliver that insight. If the producer is analytical, they show up with data, yield comparisons, cost of production models, trial results, numbers on paper. If the producer is more intuitive, they tell a compelling story, like, I had a grower south of here, similar operation to yours, who made this change last year. Here's what happened. The message adapts to the customer, not the other way around. And when it's time to make a decision, they don't shy away from it. They're comfortable discussing money. They create a sense of urgency around agronomic timing windows, not artificial sales deadlines. They guide the conversation forward with confidence, not pressure, and they define clear next steps. The result? They earn customer loyalty and they earn referrals. They don't have to ask for them. So let me lay out the contrasts because I think hearing them side by side makes the distinction really clear. Aggressive salespeople tell. Assertive salespeople ask. Aggressive salespeople differentiate with price. Assertive salespeople differentiate with value. Aggressive salespeople are in pursuit of the commodity or the product. Assertive salespeople are in pursuit of the customer. On the grain side specifically, aggressive merchandisers round the price down to whole numbers to increase their margins. Assertive merchandisers quote in 0.25% increments in real time for transparency. On the input side, aggressive salespeople lead with the early order discount. Assertive professionals lead with the agronomic plan and let the economics follow. And here's one thing that I think is really important, especially for organizations that operate on both sides of the business. Aggressive salespeople measure market share by volume. How many bushels did we buy? Or how many tons of fertilizer did we sell? Assertive professionals, on the other hand, measure it by the depth of the relationship. On the grain side, that's share of production. What percentage of that producer's total crop comes to your elevator or through it? On the input side, it's share of wallet. How much of his total seed, fertilizer, chemical, and fuel spend flows through your organization? Those two metrics, share of production and share of wallet, tell you a lot more about the health of a customer relationship than total volume ever will. Now, I want to spend some time on a sales methodology that I think is incredibly relevant to agriculture and one that most people in our industry have never heard of. It's called the Challenger Sale. It was developed by Matthew Dixon and Brent Adamson, based on a study of thousands of sales professionals across multiple industries, and their findings were surprising. They identified 5 profiles of salespeople. The hard worker, who's self-motivated and always puts in the hours. The relationship builder, who focuses on getting along with everyone and building advocates. The lone wolf, who follows his own instincts and is self-assured. The problem solver, who's detail-oriented and reliable. And the challenger, who pushes the customer to think differently and brings deep understanding of their business. Here's the part that caught my attention. When they looked at which profile consistently outperformed the others, especially in complex sales environments, it wasn't the relationship builder. In fact, relationship builders were the lowest performing group in the complex B2B sales category. The challengers were the highest, and by a wide margin. Think about that for a second. In agriculture, most of us have been taught that relationships are everything, and they matter. Don't misunderstand me. Relationships absolutely matter. But the research shows that building a relationship alone isn't enough. What separates the top performers is their ability to bring value through insight, not just through rapport. The Challenger approach is built on 3 pillars: teach, tailor, and take control. Teach means you come up to the conversation with a unique perspective the customer hasn't considered. You help them see their business differently. You're not asking what keeps you up at night. You're telling them what should be keeping them up at night because you've done the homework. Tailor means you adapt your message to the individual customer. You know your audience. If the producer is a numbers person, you bring data. If he's more of a storyteller, you bring a compelling example from another operation. The same insight delivered 2 different ways depending on who's sitting across the table. Take control means you're comfortable guiding the conversation toward a decision. You can talk about money without flinching. You create urgency around real deadlines like agronomic timing windows or seasonal marketing opportunities, not artificial sales contests. You define next steps, and you do it with confidence, not pressure. Now, why do I think this matters so much in agriculture? Because our industry is going through a significant shift. Producers today have more information at their fingertips than at any point in history. They can pull up futures prices on their phone. They can check cash bids from 5 different elevators in 30 seconds. And they can research seed varieties, compare fertilizer programs, and read agronomic research without ever talking to a salesperson. So if all you're bringing to the table is a price, you're already behind. The producer doesn't need you for that. What he does need, and what he'll value, is someone who can help him see something he can't see on his own. Someone who can take all of that information and turn it into a recommendation that's specific to his operation. That's what an assertive professional does, and that's exactly what the Challenger sale methodology describes. Let me give you a concrete example. On the grain side, an aggressive merchandiser calls a producer and says, "Hello, just wanted to let you know corn's at $4.50. You interested in selling?" A challenger calls, it says, "Hey, I was looking at the slow stochastics on December corn, and both lines, %K and %D, are above 80, representing an overbought market. We're also in the seasonal window where corn tends to find its highs. Given that you told me last fall you wanted to have 30% of your new crop sold by June, this might be worth a conversation." On the input side, an aggressive salesperson drops off a price sheet and says, "Hey, just wanted to let you know, early order deadline is November 15th. Let me know what you need." A challenger walks the field and says, "Based on your tissue samples from last year and what I'm seeing in your soil data, I think we're over applying nitrogen on your river bottom ground and under applying on the upland. If we reallocate, I think you can save $8 to $10 an acre without giving up a bushel of yield. Let me show you the numbers." Same products, same services, but a completely different approach. One is pursuing the transaction. The other is pursuing the customer. So whether you're a grain merchandiser, an input salesperson, here's a framework that works. First, know your customer. Use every data point and source available to you. CRM data, third-party acreage and production estimates, crop insurance information, social media, public FSA data. On the input side, understand their cropping plan, their rotation, their tillage practices, their financial constraints. On the grain side, understand their storage capacity, their marketing philosophy, and their historic delivery patterns. The more you know before you pick up the phone or walk through that door, the more relevant your conversation is going to be. Second, start with a question that leads to engagement, not a pitch, a question. Then add a relevant story that delivers value and share an idea they haven't thought of. On the grain side, that might be referencing a chart, a technical indicator, or a seasonal pattern. On the input side, it might be a new approach to nitrogen management or a pest resistance trend emerging in your area. Your unique and relevant idea is the first opportunity to deliver perceived value to your customer. Third, think pull versus push. You've all heard the adage that it's easier to pull a rope than to push it. The same is true for your customers. When you visit with producers face-to-face with an appointment, ask them how they use the different tools available to them. On the grain side, that's contracting tools like HTAs, basis contracts, flat price, specialty premiums, and options or structured products. On the input side, it's prepaid programs, loyalty programs, volume incentives, financing, precision ag recommendations. Understand what they value and why. Pull them toward a solution. Don't push your product or your price. Fourth, understand that they are considering you first over all other tools and technologies. That's a privilege. Don't waste it. If your competitors don't speak of profitability, cash flow, risk management, productivity, cost of production, loyalty, and/or safety, then let one of those topics be your differentiator. Form your story around profit and your idea to ensure or protect it. Find out what's important to them. Create a competitive advantage by improving or enhancing what's important to them. Fifth, leverage your human side. Being face-to-face with an appointment shows that you're human and enables you to show your human side. Nothing beats an in-person, on-farm visit. If you can't follow up in person, consider using video. For inputs professionals, this is especially powerful during pre-season planning. Walk a field with them. Look at their soil maps together. Don't just drop off a price sheet and hope for the best. And sixth, be transparent. Take an iPad with you. Show the producer how transparent the markets are and your cash bids, how your cash bids compare, and how your input pricing stacks up. On the grain side, show them the charts, the indicators, and your basis history. On the input side, show them the yield data, the trial results, the cost per acre comparisons. Differentiation is not hard, but it does require hard work. Something I've been thinking about a lot lately, if your organization both buys grain and sells inputs, whether you're a cooperative, a full-service agribusiness, or regional companies that operates on both sides, you have an enormous advantage that most of your competitors don't have. You touch both sides of the producer's operation. Think about what that means. Your grain merchandiser knows the producer's delivery history, his storage situation, his marketing tendency. Your input salesperson knows his cropping plan, his fertility needs, his equipment capabilities. And when those two sides of your organization share information and collaborate, you can offer something that no single-line competitor can match: a complete view of the producer's operation and a relationship built around total profitability. This is where share of production and share of wallet come together. They are not separate metrics. They're two sides of the same coin. The producer who trusts you with his grain is more likely to trust you with his input decisions. And the producer who values your agronomic advice is more likely to deliver his bushels either to your elevator or through your platform. Most organizations, though, don't operate this way. The grain side and the input side function as two separate businesses. They might share a building, but they don't always share information. The grain merchandiser doesn't know what the agronomist recommended last week, and the input salesperson doesn't know that the producer's delivery patterns dropped off by 40% this year. The assertive professional, the one operating with a challenger mindset, connects those dots. He sees the whole relationship. He understands that if a producer's share of production is declining, there might be an opportunity to strengthen the relationship through better agronomic advice. Or, if the producer just switched his seed program to a competitor, maybe it's time for the grain desk to have a deeper conversation about what's really going on. The aggressive one never connects those dots. He's too focused on his side of the transaction. So let me bring this home. Does the old way of selling in agriculture still work? Absolutely. It can work for any salesperson, especially in the short term. You can pound those phones. You can lead with price. And you can push volume. And you'll make some sales. But does it work for the producer customer? I believe the answer is less and less over time. Producers have more choices than ever. They have more information than ever. And the ones who are running their operations like a business, which is most of them, are looking for partners, not pitchmen. Your self-confidence is key to being assertive and delivering value. Your stature, your reputation, and your knowledge of your customer are your greatest strengths. Whether you're quoting a cash bid or recommending a seed variety, the question is the same. Are you in pursuit of the transaction, or are you in pursuit of the relationship? If you want to go deeper on the Challenger sale, pick up the book by Matthew Dixon and Brent Adamson. It's called The Challenger Sale: Taking Control of the Customer Conversation. Read it with agriculture in mind. I think you'll be surprised at how well the framework fits our industry. And if you want to talk about how data and business intelligence can support an assertive sales approach, whether it's understanding share of production, share of wallet, or building the kind of customer intelligence that gives your team a competitive edge, reach out to us at info@innovativegrain.com or visit innovativegrain.ai. Set the standard. Soon, others will follow your example. Thanks for listening to Pods and Ears. If you found value in today's episode, please take a moment to like, download, and share it with others in the grain industry who might benefit. Your feedback matters to me, so let me know what topics you'd like to hear more about or what challenges you're facing with your data and operations. You can find us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and at www.innovativegrain.ai. Until next time, keep putting your data to work.